Wow. All right. Well, if you could only have heard what happened before we went live, but now we are live.
It
We got
wasn't a
people.
hot take. You're right, Brian. It was just a intense language. Should we say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Is
can
that
say
fair?
that.
Okay.
I mean, maybe a little bit too intense for you guys out there. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just here
You'll
to
never
talk
know.
about the Haley's Comet from Deer Creek,
That's it.
1998. It's the greatest second song jam the band has ever played. Someone's going to come at me with Baker's Dozen
What?
Lawn Boy, and I don't think that is accurate.
Well,
That's a bold take right there.
wait.
It
What did
probably
you
is.
say?
I'm probably
Sorry. Can you
overlooking
repeat
something.
that? I was trying to get people to watch us, but then I didn't pay attention.
That the Haley's Comet from August 3rd, 1998, I would argue, without doing any research right now, is the best second song jam that they have ever played.
I just
mean-
don't know off the top of my head, but it seems wrong.
There's just given the trend of
It's a
playing
good
like
counter.
just the trend of playing the song before the jam, which they do all the time now.
Like
So,
all
In
like-
the
the
second
time.
set. In the second set, not in the
Oh,
first
you're
set.
talking
about
about first set? Okay.
First
Yeah, I'm talking
set,
about the second song of the show. They open the show, which is also one of the best openers that they've ever played. Rhinoceros, the only time
Yeah.
they've
Yeah,
ever covered
sick.
it.
We're gonna talk about it. We're all right.
should.
We're not even
We
doing
should.
the intro. We're not even doing the intro. Okay,
Probably
let's talk
should
about
it.
8-3. Let's just skip the whole podcast and go straight to this Deer Creek Haley's Comet. We can keep it to
It's
5
a
minutes.
It's a really good show. Have you guys
It is
listened to
a
it in
good
a while?
show.
It's an
Love
amazing
it.
show.
Recently, kind of recently.
Yeah, me too. I mean, definitely recently. Okay, we got.
Do you remember the story in the Farmer's Almanac about that show? Sorry.
Why don't you tell it to us?
No, what is that?
Why don't you tell it to us now? Why don't you tell me what movie you want to see? So I forget the guy who wrote it. I could probably get it. It's right behind me, but it would take a lot of lifting and whatever. One of the editors of the Farmer's Almanac is, and I'm paraphrasing, so if I get any of this totally incorrect, don't come at me with your accusations of. I'm paraphrasing all this. One of the editors, I think it's Kevin Castles.
Yeah, that's right. I'm here to fact check you. Go ahead.
You are okay, because this story has always had a huge impact on me and the show and blah blah blah. His brother committed suicide, I think, the year before,
I remember this one.
and when they found him in his car, there was one tape, and it was the Smashing Pumpkins' "Gish," their first album, and the song "Rhinoceros" was playing, or it had been playing. Anyway, fast forward, obviously a huge, awful, extreme, intense moment for him and his family. Fast forward a year or so, he goes to Deer Creek. Fish plays a good show the first night. Second night, they open with Rhinoceros, and he, as he tells it, I believe, has like finally like the grief hits him, and he has like
Yeah.
everything comes to, he falls, he sits down, he starts crying, his friends are there giving him huge hugs, they all know the significance of it. Total shock. Nobody ever thought that they would ever cover this song. And then they followed up with Haley's Comet, and his reaction is it's the happiest Fish song ever. And so it like helped to bring him out of everything he was dealing with. Well, not, made him in that moment have kind of a moment of clarity looking forward, as I recall reading. And then it goes into this incredible jam with a segment based off of A Love Supreme, and it segues into I Didn't Know of all songs. It's just this incredible 30 minutes to open a Fish show that also is tied to this fan who did excellent work on the Farmer's Almanac. Very personal story for him. Always has hit me really hard. The power of music, if you will. I think we can end the podcast there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I remember reading that on
mostly true.
.net. Yeah, that's really moving.
Mostly true.
He fact checked you live.
Okay. Megan, what is happening with your New York City based video interview empire and concerts?
It's a busy week this week. Thanks for asking, RJ. I just put out a new moment with Meg. I interviewed Louisa Stanchoff, who is a singer-songwriter who lives in Maine. She is amazing, has my top 3 album of the year. She's an incredible, incredible talent. And it was really awesome. You know, when you really love an album, to get the opportunity to sit down with someone and talk to them about it, it just felt really special. So we got to talk when she was in Brooklyn last month, and I put that out today. So if you get a chance, it's just a little bit, it's just a moment, check it out. And then this weekend, it's kind of a big weekend here in New York. On Saturday night, I'm seeing Lamp at the Brooklyn Bowl. A lot of friends I know are going to be there. It's going to be really fun. And those guys absolutely rip. So if you've not seen them, you should come check them out. And then on Sunday, I'm going to see Goose play at MSG the first time, which is crazy.
That's a moment.
With some other
Yeah.
people.
A few other people will be there, like someone named Trey, someone named Dave, someone named Susan, some other people.
Yeah. I just
Mhm.
want to say that I mentioned the interview that the guys did with Rick from Corner of Gray Street about Dave Matthews, and at the end they talk about like whether like what he would play with Dave Matthews, and he's like, I've never gotten to play with him, and this was like, it's happening this week, so I bet it'll happen.
Yeah, that'll be really
And
exciting.
they better fucking play bartender, or I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
It almost makes too much sense for them to play together. Like
I don't understand what that means.
like it's just it's
Can
The
it just make
sounds-
the perfect amount of sense?
the sounds cross over so well that like I could almost see them like avoiding it because it feels like it's too good.
Interesting.
It's too good.
Yeah, I'm
That's
confused
probably why
because
there's
there's
never
so
covered
many
it.
people, right?
Right.
There's
Sorry,
so many people playing. I'm confused at like who's going to play with who, or if there's just going to be like 55 people on the stage at all times playing. I don't know. We'll
That
see.
might happen. That might
Those are
happen.
always fun.
Yeah.
I want to tell you guys that we have 4 reprise shows coming up that I want everyone to know about. We have Northampton, Massachusetts on 12/19. I'm going to be there. And then there are 3 shows in Connecticut in January. That's not true. There's 1 show in Connecticut in January at Park City Music Hall. We're also playing at Soundcheck Studios in Pembroke, Mass. And then at the, what's it called? Stone Church in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Classic venue.
Oh,
It's a
cool. That's
3-night
awesome.
run, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So check out repriseband.com and check out those shows in the Northeast. And for those of you who have asked, yes, we will figure out how to get to the Midwest as they need to do.
We
But I have a
really got to
question.
do something in Colorado. We have
Yeah.
to.
Yes, that has to happen too.
I don't know if you were aware of this, but there are a lot of jam band fans out here, and
A few.
just a few of us. And there's a pretty big one moving out in January who will go crazy.
Well, interesting. Well, I also I just want to say, Brian, that I won't say anything because it's not announced yet, but Megan and I are trying to get you to come to New York for Reprise's first New York City show, which is going to be in March. That's all I'm going to say right now. Because it's going to be awesome. So,
Yeah.
there's going to be more stuff.
I'm waiting on getting
we'll
my
make
permission slip signed. And yeah, New York, right around my birthday, right around your birthday, RJ.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's nothing like early March on the East Coast or Midwest. It is just the most beautiful time of
So
year.
nice.
Just mountains of brown snow.
Yep.
Really like great wind and rain just like pelting you in
Yeah.
the face.
Love it.
But also like $1.99 slices of pizza everywhere. So I'm
Yep.
into it.
Really good Korean food. Be great. We'll have a great time.
This
There's
is
a lot to
And
do.
we'll get to see Reprise in a really great venue here in New York City. Should be awesome.
It's
Do I
And
get
maybe
to
we
our
can even
show?
do a live HF pod.
You could give input on the show.
Input. Oh,
Ooh,
okay.
input.
The input.
Maybe you need to let him pick the show so he'll
Okay.
actually come out. This is a
All
good
right.
this is
There
a
we
good
go,
like
there we go.
bargaining
But-
tool.
But a live HF pod is a really good call. I think that we should do a draft episode in person and see
Oh my
see how it
god.
goes.
That would be so stressful for me. I'm into it. Let's
That
do
would
it.
be really fun. Okay, so Ev Dude is on the chat on YouTube. So good to see you. No one else is commenting right now. Be sure to get in with your comments. But I also we have no voicemails this week. We have no new Apple Podcast reviews. We have no new premium members. And I just want to know, like, what did we do? What did we do
It's
to
like
you
nobody
guys?
loves us.
Does anyone love us?
Wow.
Give us reviews.
I have to
send us
imagine
voicemails.
right now that people are using their podcasting time in other means.
Mm.
trying to figure out what's happening in the world and if everything's going to be okay, and if the news that
It's
they
not.
read is realistic, or if it's like,
Not.
wait, are you guys playing a joke? I
We're
think
all
that
gonna
they
die.
will all come back
Does that
like
help?
mid. Yeah, that at some point we will. Great point. I think they're all going to come back around the holidays and be like, whoa, there's like 5 new top 5 tour or top
Mm.
tour episodes from HF Pod. I'm just going to binge this because I've given up all hope.
Yeah.
That's
And, you know, a
interesting.
lot of people have been commenting on how much they love the series. And now that we're on Blue Sky, which is apparently the new place to be,
Mm.
a lot of
Yep.
people have been commenting on, you know, how excited they are about these episodes and the podcast. So if those people would just leave a review, that would be super cool.
It
It
would be
doesn't
cool.
take long, guys. It'd be really cool.
Doesn't. It doesn't.
I tried to
Okay.
leave a review and they said you can't leave a review of your own podcast. I'm sorry, sir.
They kicked you out.
That's
Tim
right, there's a
Cook was like,
Wendy's.
we are a country or a company of ethics and morals here.
Yeah. Okay. So the show.
Are you okay, RJ?
This is so ridiculous. The tour we're talking about is Summer '98. It's the number 4 tour ranked by fans. The number 4
Mhm.
tour ranked by us. It's Cosmic Alignment, and it's kind of funny because we had a text exchange about this today. And if you asked me to name the top 10 Phish tours of all time with no paper or internet, I would not name this tour. But as I was listening to the tour, and apparently I'm the one who chose it, so that was good.
And I thought I
mindset.
did. I
But it was-
apologize for it on the chat.
You know I know Brian knows the Alonzo Mourning GIF. I don't know if you do, Megan, but this tour, listening to this tour was like one slow Alonzo Mourning, where you're
Well,
like,
now you have to explain what that means.
it's basically like going from kind of disagreement to like, you have a point, all in one
It's
short.
like reluctant, like, yeah, man, you got a good point.
It's in, but he's like on the sidelines, just sitting by himself and clearly going through something that is making him feel that way. Which is it's just a funny thing. I'll send it to you. But
Okay.
but it's so fun. This tour is so fun. The music is
Yeah.
unstoppable. There's a lot of like enthusiasm and there's a lot of exploration. It really like I'm now around to the fact that this is the number 4 ranked tour. I think we can make the case for it. We already have, but the fans spoke too. So we're kind of in alignment. But I guess, Brian, should this be where we ranked it?
I think if I made my own personal list, I would not have this at number 4, but I would definitely have it in the top 10. This is the celebration post reinvention, and there's almost no other Phish tour like it. It's not like they're trying to, they're playing in a new style compared to the last year, but it's more like they've sanded down the edges of this like very angular, noisy, skronky, kind of aggressive funk sound into something really pretty. Plus you mix covers, great set lists, really fluid jamming throughout each show. Now those 3 things combined, you can't really find a detractor on. So I'll get into this a little bit when we talk about the themes. I mean, yes, I think that this is definitely ranked 3-4 tours too high, but I also think there is an argument to be made that when you're having this much fun and you're hitting at such a high batting average, even if you're not taking as many risks as the year before, or if certain bad habits are starting to seep in, how do you argue against the way Trey sounds, the covers, the jams? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I think about 98, I really think the tour that was the most important this year is the Island Tour, but obviously we're not talking about it because it's a run. But that tour to me
More
is
on that later.
massively important, and definitely when the sound changed for them. And a flip was just switched in that tour. And this tour takes what they found there, you know, takes this transition between the funk reinvention and the millennial sound and really plays with it in a way that's really cool. You know, you can hear the funk like dripping away. And by the end of the tour, it's barely there. I mean, it's there, but they're not like hitting anything anymore. It's much more like ambient. And, you know, by the ambient jam, they're pretty much like deeply in those weeds. It's just, it's really interesting to listen back to. But after listening to like 97 Summer, like that's a way better tour, just more consistent, more evolution throughout the tour. This one just doesn't have that consistency. Like there's so many unbelievable moments. And like you said, Brian, I totally agree that Trey's tone is just like incredible. The fun covers, all of the interesting set listing, but it definitely doesn't have that consistency of like, there's not like, out of the 22 shows, half of them are like really good. And there are a few that are just like, okay.
Megan, I want to ask you more about 98. I just want to say hi to Alex, who said he's watching from the UK. It's 9:49 p.m.
Oh, yeah, that's
love
awesome.
to see you. Love to see you here.
That's so great.
He got to his first Phish shows at Dick's this year. Does anyone currently have a higher batting average of Phish shows? Like,
yeah, you
just
nailed
kicking
it.
things off with
just
Dick's
retired
this year?
I know,
Alex,
just retired.
amazing
Don't
stuff.
anything else. That's awesome.
That's
Megan, is there anything else we need to know about 1998?
Yeah, let's go through that really quickly, and then we can get into the meteor stuff. But obviously, like I mentioned, we have the island tour in the spring, and then the band spends the rest of the spring and early summer laying down the tracks and finishing up Story of the Ghost. Then they do 9 shows in Europe in the start of June, and then the U.S. summer tour that we are talking about today starts out west, goes down to Texas, the Midwest, Southeast, and the Northeast a little bit, and then it ends, of course, at Lemon Wheel for 80,000 people up in Maine. And there are 22 shows and 98 entries on the jam chart shows. So 4.45 jams per show. But to be honest, I think that's a little bit beefed up. I don't know if it's just because the jams are shorter, but when I look at how many like really amazing jams are on this tour, it's a lot less than that. A lot less.
I think there's
Do you agree
there's a
with
lot
that?
of I think there's a lot of skippable content in this tour. I think there's a
I
lot of
agree.
like first set kind of like standard stuff that I've listened to probably 4 shows of the tour like all the way through,
Yeah.
and they're fun, like they flow well, and Trey is, well, I wouldn't talk about Trey in a minute, but I think like there's a lot of stuff in this tour that's like you can kind of pass over.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, this is the start of we're going to have some really high moments and some duds. And for the next 15-ish years, that's going to kind of be the norm for Phish when they're playing.
Dang.
I mean, I've always thought of 98 as kind of like especially fall. That to me is the first 2.0 tour. But this tour, it seems like a band that is having way more fun than they're like deeply trying to achieve a new sound. And so they're kind of relying on what has worked. And so it's new, but it's not shocking. But to both of your points, and I want to shout out EV Dude's comment here. I often like to think about what would happen if 7/28/98 set 2 is played today. I'm going to read to you 7/28/98 set 2 and just tell me your immediate thoughts. It goes like this. The Wedge, Poor Heart, fades into Mango Song, fades into Brother. Contact, fades into Maze. Prince Caspian, You Enjoy Myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the first word about that set that comes to mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's not a real anchor there,
No, it really kind of to me is like this is anti-flow.
Yeah.
This is just we're throwing songs out and seeing what happens, and you get
there's
that
a lot of
throughout
those
the tour.
moments. Yeah. On the tour.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, like even they've officially released like 8/1/98 from Alpine Valley, which has an incredible start to the show, an amazing tweezer. But the second set begins with Piper Wilson, 2001, Magia, 2001. You get the tweezer, you get a fluffhead, then Brian and Robert, Albuquerque, Chalk Dust, Frankenstein. Now, I like a lot of those songs.
Yeah.
But that's not really like a fluid set
Yeah.
list with like cohesive ideas compared to say like Gorge Night 2 that shows the peak of this band during this era.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot less consistency.
What's your favorite cover of the tour, Megan?
My favorite cover? I mean, probably the
answer later if you
Rhinoceros cover. Probably the Rhinoceros cover, just because it's so wild. Like, I never thought they would play Smashing Pumpkins. That's crazy. I loved that they were kind of living in the moment, like playing current songs at this time. I think that that's something that's really interesting they were doing on this tour, and it taps into something I want to talk about when we talk about the theme. But that is such a crazy song for them to play. I just never thought they would play a song like that. And I mean, of course, like, obviously playing Terrapin Station is like a huge deal, but I do think it makes that show seem a lot better than it is, because that moment is so amazing and just so emotional for so many people who especially 98, but even now, I think so many people made their way to Phish through the Grateful Dead. And so obviously whenever Phish plays a Grateful Dead song, it is a fucking huge deal. And I've never seen it happen, and I would honestly lose my mind. But I do think that show is a little bit overrated because of that.
It's a far cry right now from not knowing if they'd ever play the Grateful Dead to Phil Lesh passes away and everyone's making bets on what night that weekend they're going to play Box of Rain.
Yeah, it's true.
I think I would go with Ramble On.
Oh,
The two versions are
second version.
outstanding.
Yeah.
The second version is unbelievable. I mean, the second version is one of my favorite jams of the entire tour. We'll talk about it. The way it just like drips into Slave to the Traffic Light.
So good.
But the first one, even without the jam, is such a shock, and you can just hear, if you've ever been to Alpine Valley, like when the cheers come, they just ripple up the side of the mountain, which I haven't seen cheers in that venue in probably 10 years now, because there was nary a cheer in
No cheers.
2022. No cheers, just polite golf claps the whole weekend. No, but like when people start realizing that they're playing Ramble On, and then Page comes in, his voice is just perfect for it. They drop into it, and then you get a Mike song to follow. Like that is Phish knowing in the moment, perfect cover, perfect execution, perfect follow-up song. Like what a way to start a show.
Oh my God. That second version's so good.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So themes.
What about you, RJ? What's your favorite cover?
He's just gonna try to skip it.
Yeah, come on.
I was just gonna skip it. No, I mean, I think the Rhinoceros is so good. It's really hard to not like. There's some kind of bad covers on this tour. Let's be honest. Like there's some that don't work that well.
A little sloppy.
But I mean, I think I was there for the Terrapin Station, so that's just what a special,
crazy,
amazing night. So I will say that, but I'll talk about that in a little bit as it relates to that show. But I think that is the memory of the tour for me. I saw some shows on this tour, but just man, I mean, it was outrageous, really outrageous. Okay, themes. I just want to touch quickly on Trey's playing in this tour, which we probably will talk about throughout. But I have 4 examples that I wrote down just as I was listening of him being like in total control of the jams, which is just outrageous. The 7/17 2001, the Riverport Gin, obviously, the August 2nd Reba, and this Caspian from August 6th, which I think is Atlanta. Those are like 4. Like he's just so out front in a lot of this tour, and just absolutely like on top of everything guitar wise. It's really amazing. And maybe 99 had some of that, but this is kind of like the peak of Trey really being in control playing wise and not like stepping back as much. But I think he's starting to step back a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's like that almost like a hangover from the like dexterity of the mid 90s of his just being completely like on top of his craft. He still has that, like, despite the partying and the loosening up and the playfulness, he's still there.
It's also my favorite tone he's ever played in. Every note just sounds, I mean, it's just like, it's buttery. It's so but it's also very clear. I don't know. It's like a bell when you hear it, but then he slides up and down the neck of the guitar. There's nothing that sounds really staccato-y throughout it. It just
Yeah.
flows in such a dreamlike way. When you get into some of these jams, I mean, like the Ramble On that we're talking about from 812, the like descending riff he does,
Mm.
and it just complements what Page can do on the roads, what Mike is doing at that point. Fishman, who has really learned how to play with a lot of silence at this point in time. I don't know. It's the best I feel like I've ever heard him sound. Aside from like the mid 90s peak, which more on in a couple episodes, but like it's just beautiful stuff. I have a sports related theme about this tour.
Yes.
Could I potentially share
Ooh.
that?
About time.
Okay, I hope I
About
get
time.
it.
25 minutes in. About time. RJ's going to get this. Probably only
Brian, by the
because
way,
he's-
do you like that I'm sporting this hat for the team with the worst record in the NBA?
you really need to start thinking about the expectations around the Sixers when you became a fan versus where they are today. It's a troubling sign.
It
I'm
really
starting to go
is.
through it with my English football club, so I understand the feeling. So try to keep up with me here, guys. All right.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
at some
should
point
have
in high
whiteboard.
school. At some
Yeah.
point in high school, I tracked out Fish's career in comparison to Michael Jordan's career. I don't have that explicitly, but like
Why
I have
does
a
that
looser.
not surprise me?
I have a looser comparison here. So there's an argument that 1993 and 1994 Fish are kind of the conference finals moments, for the band. They reach these peaks, but they're not quite over the top. I'm putting a pin in that because I have a lot of different things to say about Fall 94 next week than I thought going in, but there's a lot of still growth happening. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's like a really exciting basketball team that loses one round short of going to the finals. Like they're there. It. You believed it all season. There were moments where you allowed yourself to think this team can win a title, and then it doesn't happen. And when you look back in hindsight, it retrospectively makes sense. But the 1995 is the first title. It's this like everything comes together and they just dominate. And I think like the 1991 Chicago Bulls in this sort of standpoint, where like the entire team clicked and they lost 2 games the entire playoffs. Nobody was beating them. They were just steamrolling. Then usually what happens to a team that reaches that level is they take a step back. This did not happen to the Chicago Bulls, but there's a step back. The disease of me sets in. Certain guys want a contract. Other guys say, hey, I played a huge role on this team last year. I won us a title. Give me the rock. It's like, no, dude. You're like a 9-point a game player. We need your assists. We need your rebounds. Stop trying to hog the ball. And that messes with the team. So they kind of lose the next year. And that's 1996 for Fish. 97, this is like the 1992 title that the Bulls had. It's full arrival, domination from the start of the season to the end. There's no moment in between. Summer 98, this is another surefire title, but this feels a little bit more blissful because there's no stress. You know how good this team is. You know that they're capable of winning on every night. As a result, they take a few nights off that they shouldn't take, that a year earlier they wouldn't have taken. There would not be a Bonner Springs show in summer 1997. There would not be like Atlanta and Raleigh, these kind of just like slightly off nights where it's still good. If you went, you got like the vibes, but the band just didn't totally have it those nights. So there's not as much stress this year. It's more just joy, and it's just soaking in the fact that right now you are watching one of the best bands that has ever played, or one of the best teams that has ever played, and you're far past that. Like you have the capability of turning games off and checking out of shows because you're like, I know that it's going to end well. I know that they're going to win it all this year. And they ultimately do. I mean, this is a great overall year of Fish. They play one of their best New Year's Eve shows that they've ever played this year later on. And this tour overall is fantastic, but it doesn't have that, like, we're gunning down everyone right now on our way. So I'll step back, let you guys comment on that. Meg, if I missed anything from a sports data point, please share.
I totally followed that. I totally got it. Yeah, it totally makes sense to me.
Yep.
I think that's for me like one takeaway from this, which is like the end of the show. But I really do think when you have to reinvent yourself the first time, you don't know if you can do it. Once you've done it,
Right.
you're like, oh, we can do that. We just did it. I
Yeah.
think there's like a reinvention and evolution the second time around is so much easier because you can do it, which also makes you less hungry and less desperate, which I think is the huge thing about 97 is that they felt that 96. I like that. The disease of me. That's cool. I've never heard that before. That's like a cool thing to think about and how that eventually kind of comes into the Phish universe. But that's really cool. And I do think that that's really what happens in this year. And I think that it kind of relates to my theme. So I had this idea that for them, they're thinking about moving forward as like three main things. Living in the moment is like something they learned that you have to do, right? That's kind of like what the funk taught them. You have to like work together and live in the moment. So you've got great improv and jamming in this tour, great connectedness between the band members. I mean, there are some jams that feel like telepathic on this tour, just like completely like next level. And then they're also playing covers of the moment. Like they're living in the moment. They're like, we're in the late 90s. Like these are songs that we're going to play right now because we're hearing them on the radio. Then the second part of it is looking back. So they're bringing out really old bust outs that they haven't played in a really long time. And then covers that are really meaningful and influential for them. They're playing Zeppelin, Velvet Underground, they're playing the Grateful Dead. Like they're playing things that saying like, these are our influences. And this is how we can bring them into today because we're confident enough that we've made our own thing. And then finally, like loosening the reins. They've been so like 97 is so tight and there's so much like punch to the funk reinvention. Like we were just saying, there's such a drive and a hunger for that now they can kind of loosen that up and move forward in a really loose way. So that's kind of what I think are my like main themes, that they're choosing to move forward in those three ways.
I think you guys
Love
are
that.
both like, yeah, both exactly right and saying like the same things in different ways. It's all like,
Mhm.
it's great. We're
Yeah.
really aligned here for our number
There's
4.
no disease
tour.
of me at this point.
No, there's not.
We are ESP type of stuff. I mean, I think Evie Dude, we've been saying this, but he says this really well. Summer 98 might be the first tour where Phish felt like they didn't need to prove anything to themselves or the audience. I think that's
Yeah.
part of it. I think like they've mastered themselves. That reinvention from 95 to 97 is so stark that you can't really come out the next year and be like, we're a totally new band unless you're King Gizzard. And
Yeah.
maybe in hindsight, Trey wishes that they were more like King Gizzard, at least at this point in his life. But Phish was like, it was such a big thing at this point. They were, they're coming back to play huge amphitheaters and play huge arenas. And like, that is a part of the business decisions and calculations they have to make. And it almost, it seems like they just wanted to go out there and have a really good time. And they did.
All right, let's talk about some jams. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
I think you should start.
Okay. I want to tell you guys my favorite jam from this whole tour.
Wow.
It's the Runaway Jim from Starlake.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. I haven't gone back to this jam in a really long time, but this is composing on the spot. This is just a complete effortless exploration. It's has this really like stretching and searching hopefulness to it that I just think is so special. And it's in the middle of this show, it opens up the second set and they have, obviously this is officially released, so everybody knows it, but I had just wanted to talk about it and I know everybody knows it, but it's just so important. They have this Trenchtown Rock cover, which is fun. And then they do this huge bust out in Time Loves a Hero. Like this is to be one of the biggest bust outs ever. It's massive. It's like over 1,000 shows or something. And then they open this set too with this Runaway Jim, which to me, the way that it coasts along, I thought I was reading one of the Phish.net reviews and they weren't talking about this jam, but they were talking about 98 in general. And I don't remember who said it and I apologize, but it was so incredible. They talked about horizontal jamming. And I think that's really apt for this tour in that the jams have this forward momentum to them and they don't peak up and down the way vertically jams can, which is how most jams kind of have been in the past and are in the future, I'd say. these are really horizontal jams in that they kind of move in this way that feels kind of coasting along. And I think the magic is how they're able to find intrigue and melody on top of ambience and also continue to sound really connected and have a momentum and a pulse to them. And I think this is just a perfect example of that sound.
I like that horizontal jamming.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think this jam rules. It's interesting to think about. Summer '97 has that Shoreline Gym. Fall '97 has the Worcester Gym. This tour has the Star Lake Gym. A lot of these gym jams are not necessarily aligned with what the entire tour sounds like. There's a little bit more searching and kind of pushing against the norms of the style they're playing in. But at the same time, you get to that moment, I think it's like 25, 26 minutes in, where it's just like hypnotic and it's like this groove that makes no sense. I almost wish that they would clip it, that like,
Yeah.
just so
Yeah, yeah.
weird. I wish they would clip that and like turn that into a song, because I think it could be a really cool bass for a Fish song. Add some synths there, some like modern day Page. But the fact that they find that and then just kind of keep going, and
Yeah.
it doesn't lead to a massive peak. I think it speaks both to where the tour is at, but also kind of is one of the rare jams that pushes against the edges of the sound they're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the first. It's kind of the only real like monster jam of the tour outside of the lines
Yeah.
of what's expected. I mean, there's some other great jams, but this is just truly out there.
I mean,
really
this
great.
Kind of the
no one
counter
else gets
to-
near 35 minutes. I don't think any other jam does.
Yeah,
It's kind of the counter to the Riverport Gin.
Yeah.
Which that is
Yeah.
like 24 minutes of hose and funk and groove.
Yeah.
And this is like, okay, let's see what happens after dark when we jam like that.
Yeah.
I mentioned last week that this show 811, we were not able to obtain any weed anywhere. And
Tragic to be not have weed for that
Especially with-
jam. Let's be honest.
especially with the Bob Marley debut opener.
I know.
Fucking
That's
ridiculous.
really fucked up.
But it was a fun show. The Reba in this Trey's soloing in the Reba is just amazing. It's a really they start. I think the sound kind of changes, which I want to mention in a minute. I think we should talk quickly about. Let me find one of these that does this thing that I want to talk about. The segues in this tour are just. There's so many that are just so amazing. I mean
Yes.
the Ramble On Slave is probably the best example, but there's one earlier on the tour, which is the August 2nd, the Ghost into Lifeboy. There's so many moments where they just land into the next song, and they're usually a slow song, and it just is, man, like really, really amazing. I don't really like teases, but I did go back to the 715, the tweezer, and that whole California Love thing. Like it fits so well with all the things you guys were talking about in terms of like their like attitude and tone, and like it kind of like fits so well. It doesn't feel forced at all. It's really awesome. And then they drop into Free. It's another perfect segue. It's crazy that like the first 3 or 4 shows of the tour, first 3 shows are released, so you can like,
Yeah,
those are in a row, which I feel like doesn't happen that much. But that opener it's pretty sweet, and the way that the tweezer drops into the Free is just awesome. But that whole tweezer California Love thing is great.
It's really sexy. It's like got like those fuzzy synths. It's so effortless, and the Free after it is absolutely crazy. The band is like so into it. They're like yelling, like it's really fun.
it's kind of the thesis for the whole tour, because like you think back to the late 90s, and even today, like if you're having a party, you're gonna put on some 90s West Coast rap, and
Definitely.
like for Fish to do that is kind of like the whitest thing that they could possibly do, but it also really fits the vibe of the moment and where they're at coming back from Europe. And the next night though, like totally different side to it. You get this Reba that
Love
almost
that.
collapses on itself and then fades into Fast Enough for You, kind of to your point, RJ, about like plucking these old ballads out and putting them in really, really cool spots. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of silence on this tour that is really good, and there's a lot of where a year earlier the tendency was kind of to find a groove and then figure out kind of a platform for Trey to just go full Hendrix.
Mhm.
Instead, here, like the whole idea is like flattening everything out and just like these little like burbles of sound from each individual member where they almost start to sound like each other. You know, you can't really pick out, is that Mike or is that
Yeah.
Trey? Is that Trey or is that Paige? And even Fishman, as you get towards like the Lemon Wheel stuff, he's playing, it sounds like, with you know, like a little bit of a softer drumstick just to like bring down. It's very contemplative. And whereas a year later we talked about Summer 99 earlier, that's much more groove oriented. This is more like, these are, I think Maggie, you texted it this weekend, like these are jams that you can read to, and there's
Oh,
something really
definitely.
special about Fish playing that way.
Yeah, when a band can get really quiet, I love that. Like, it just takes such confidence, and it's hard to do it well and have it still be interesting, and they totally nail that. I think these 3 opening shows are so strong, and I think from that Portland show, I just also wanted to, like, shout out the horn into the jam because
Yeah.
it is just one of my favorite moments on this whole tour. Horn is just such an epic song, and to hear that and then have it go into this unbelievable, mellow, rich, just delicate jam. I was walking my dog at night last night listening to that again, and I was like, this is the perfect late night dog walking vibes. Like, it was just so mellow and so great, and I love that they're playing like this in the beginning of the tour. It's really, really cool. And that Reba from the Gorge is definitely one of my favorite jams. It's on .net, someone called it Milky, or they have that in the thing. And I think that that's so good. Like, it's so gorgeous and sweeping and so easy and fluid. And yeah, the melting into Fast Enough for You. My God. Even the tube at that show is really beautiful. It's like that
Mhm.
tube is the perfect example of like funk plus ambience. Like, they've got both of them in there, which is fun when the jams with songs have both of them. It's really cool.
Pretty wild that they found that combination and that worked.
I know. It's
Yeah.
hard to do.
You know, nobody would think that, like, I mean, Brian Eno had some funky songs like Sky Saw on Another Green World, but like he was so well known for ambient music, and this is a lot of that sound and that style that they're playing in. I don't know. It feels like they're combining 2 styles of, you know, recently popular music in a way that nobody was predicting could work, and somehow works.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah. Brian, what do you got?
I mean, I'm going to return to an earlier argument and just give a huge shout out to the 8-3 Haley's comment. This is perfect placement, perfect type of jam. I'll talk about the show when we talk about shows, but I mean, it's one of my favorite shows of all time. It has flow, and this jam, the way that it reaches this A Love Supreme segment, just feels like Fish 500. Like they're playing at a grad level
Mhm.
now. They're starting to insert jazz into what they're performing, and you know, it speaks. Like, there's moments where you could dance to in this jam. There's moments where it gets really contemplative and really pretty, and it kind of just, everything I love about this tour is all kind of swirled into, and we're only in the second song of the show. Like, come on, there's so much here. I can go back and listen to this time and time again and just be happy.
I want to hear this released, this song especially.
Very.
Yeah. Another Deer Creek box set, you know, member, right? Just do
mean,
all the Deer Creek shows.
Do
except for
all
you
the
want me
Deer
to-
Creek shows except for
I'll skip ahead. Like, we've got 95, we've got one of the nights in 96. The other night in 96 is so. But like, 8/10/97, we need that officially released. 8/3/98, we need that officially released.
yeah.
7/25/99, we need that officially released. 7/11/2000, we need that officially released. Why don't we just do the whole thing? There's some up and down shows in there, but like, the classics are the classics, and we would all buy this. Or at least we'd promote it.
We definitely promote it.
We definitely promote it. So I feel like the toward the end of the tour, around the Walnut Creek show, the ghost in that show was I heard like the sound kind of shifting as they got further along into more of like a
Mm,
bluesy, bouncy kind of sound in the jams as the tour went on. And they got like that, the kind of the repetitive, like droning guitar soloing stuff, but more upbeat, a little bit more bluesy. I don't really know what happened, but I feel like earlier on it was a little bit less dynamic. But then as the tour went on, they kind of got into this space, which like that Ghost from Walnut Creek and the Sneak and Sally from the next night at Merriweather, those
Yeah.
are like
mhm.
kind of a different sound, and it's an evolving sound, and it's awesome. I love both those jams.
Yeah, I mean that Sally's a really good example. The Piper is a little bit more hypnotic and faster than a lot of jams throughout the tour, but you're right. There is a little bit more of kind of maybe it's the festival is lingering and they know they've got a but even the festival doesn't have a ton of funk. Aside from like the
Mm-mm.
cities, there's just the cities is a really good example as well from 731, which is kind of off kilter from what they typically are doing. It's a little bit more Trey focused and hosey.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can hear change coming for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Do you guys want to do one more and then we'll take a break and talk about shows?
That sounds
You
great.
go, Meg. I don't want to take yours.
Okay, well, there's a couple ways I could go here. I definitely have. I'm not going to talk about it because we talked about it a little bit, but that Ramble On Into the Slave, I just want to say that it's the perfect example of them taking their influence and looking back and making it fish-like. That jam off Ramble On is like so fishy and it's so interesting and cool. And then to go into a song like Slave, which is just the ultimate fish song too, I think it's just a perfect example of what they're doing really well on this tour. But I want to talk about the tweezer from Alpine Valley because I love this tweezer. I think it's so interesting. Mike and Fishman are so good in the lead off to this jam. They are just absolutely crushing. And then the way Paige comes in on the piano, it's so dramatic. And it just ends up in that kind of kaleidoscopic, swirling, shimmering, like, and then it has like the huge cacophonous crescendo. And it's just a piece. This is a really cool tweezer that I don't think like really remember that it was so good. Like it doesn't come to mind when I think of like the best tweezers, but it's really fantastic.
I think it might be my favorite tweezer ever.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's right in line with the way what I want to hear from music.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Wow.
This is BTP episode number 5. We called it the Dad Rock Tweezer. It kind of sounds like light beer while you're barbecuing, and you got like a
Yes.
game on in the corner. Kids are playing; they're not asking you for anything. And you're chatting it up with another dad about life, and that's pretty much what I want out of these jams. It's very Steve Gunn like, very William Tyler esque, just kind of rollicking along. You feel like you're driving the back roads of America. Yeah, it's an amazing tweezer. If people have not heard that in a while, highly recommend.
There's something, it's kind of like a modern day tweezer in a way, because it's like melodic and then it gets kind of weird. It has that combo like you're talking about, Brian, that it wouldn't be out of place in 2024.
Yeah,
totally.
Feels like,
I want to say just about
this 2015 as well.
Yeah. This show love tapers, love audience recordings, but when you listen to this show and you hear the mics from this show, where there's like Paige's work on this mics, I was just realizing the difference between the audiences and the soundboards, where you can hear every single like note that Paige is playing on all these different keyboards, and it's just like it just adds a level of detail that's it's really hard to capture on audience recordings, I think.
Yeah, this is kind of an era where the arena audience recordings are outstanding. Fall 97 for the most part, the Island tour. But when you got out in the amphitheaters, it's very hit or miss. And if the wind's crazy, and Alpine is so big that I always felt when I was listening to the audience tape of the show that you're like listening through like 19th century, like, little listening device that you like put up so people can hear, you can talk to you. And when they put out the official release, it just elevates everything.
We do have to take a break in a minute, but Brian, I want you to finish what you're saying or go to the next thing. But I also want to say, I want Ev Dude to get his shout out for the 726. You Enjoy Myself. The You Enjoy Myself they were pretty monstrous on this tour.
Yeah.
And that one's near 30 minutes. It's a very, very good version.
Yeah.
I think that's also the show where Albuquerque debuted, which amazing stuff. I'm gonna totally take up your commercial break here and talk about two jams. I thought Megan was going to go with one of these, so I was giving her the space so I wouldn't take it. But Lemon Wheel, two very specific jams from this. The 8:15 ambient jam. It's up there with Tower and Woodlands that just happened this summer at Magnaball. Crazy to think good things happen at Magnaball. That really feel truly thematic, a part of that period, and like the sound that they were playing at that moment. Really inventive way to share music and share musical space with your listeners, and play a very different style of music than you're typically hearing Phish play in like a condensed show. But that, man, you put on this hour-long jam and you're just there. The candles, the fact that it was on the main stage, that everyone just kind of like hung out, chilly limestone Maine. I'm totally here for it. It's got so many segments that every time I listen to it, it's like, okay, I know exactly what's coming, but it's still that satisfying. I just love it so much. And then the next night, I'll keep this very brief, relatively. Sorry, RJ. Have I ever kept anything brief in this?
Don't worry, then I'm going to comment. So it's good. Keep going.
We're never going to take a commercial break. The Ghost. I'll be fully honest. For a long time, I was always just like, yeah, they played Ghost at Lemon Wheel. It didn't hit me. And then a friend of mine sat me down and was like, you have to listen to how weird this riff is that Trey plays. It doesn't make any sense. And it's true. It has almost like no start or end. It just kind of like weaves up and down and up and down. And it just repeats itself in a way that it doesn't feel like it should. And it's so beautiful. And it sounds like something that could be played at like 3:00 in the morning. I'm here for it. It's one of my favorite Ghosts that have ever been played. I think it's the strongest Ghost of the overall tour, and it's a very good counter to like 719s from Shoreline, which is just rock star Trey, just shredding your face off, similar to what he did in Prague. This one is very contemplative, beautiful. Reminds me of the 12-30-16 Ghost in a lot of ways, where it's just like you're weaving back and forth. And how did they find this out of Ghost? I have no idea, but I'm here for. So, and Ambient Jam and Ghost, great stuff.
Yeah, those are two of my favorite jams from the tour. The Ghost, I'll just say, because I think you described it perfectly, that maybe because this series is so much work to listen to all of this music, so I stay up reading, obviously, and this Ghost was the perfect thing to read to. And I have listened to this Ghost maybe just as much as anything else on this tour. I've listened to it like 3 or 4 times. It's really fantastic and excellent, and it's just ambient heaven. But the ambient jam, what I loved about it, listening to it, especially now, is because you can really hear the like ancestral lines to the Woodlands jam. Like it is like a direct ancestor of like the stuff they did this summer. And that's so cool. And I also love it because it's like Phish takes on ambient music. So it doesn't sound just like ambient music. It's not just atmospheric. It's still collaborative. It's still them working together and playing together and listening to each other. It's just a perfect piece of art. And I also loved reading to this too. So thank you for all of the good jams to read to this week, Phish.
Good reading jams. That's what they're here for. That's what Trey's always said. That's what they want.
Yeah. They just want people to be hanging out reading alone at night.
Want people to read.
Why go to shows?
We do not want to you to go away and read. We want you to listen to these words from our sponsors, and then we'll be back. Okay, so let's talk about shows.
Let's do it.
Who wants to start?
8398.
Yeah, that was the top of my list to start with. Brian, go there.
Well, beyond the Rhinoceros and the Haleys and the I didn't know, you get Ride Captain Ride, which is first time in 494 shows. Big bust out coming there in the first quarter. The remainder of the first set, Cars, Trucks, Buses, MoMA, Strange Design, Zero. Nothing that's going to. But at that point, 40 minutes in the show, you almost don't need just cool. Just we're good. We're playing with house money. Second set, you've got a really cool Wild Gumbo that it gets very overrated by what happened to kick off the show. To kick off the second set, a really, really beautiful Limb by Limb, cool Meat. You get Bike first time since November 7th, 96. 129 shows. Really cool Tube. Wedge closes things out, and then Circus Antelope. Very classic stuff to end it out. Again, we're not. This isn't a year earlier when they play that just monumental, crazy rotational jam second set. This is just quality classic Phish combined with some really inventive playing. It's one of those shows that if I want to hear all aspects of Phish in one, I will pick this.
Yeah, it's like a perfect set list, I think. And I don't know that he was doing that a ton on this tour, but I think this one's perfect. I think the second set has massive flow. I was listening to it and I was just going to listen to the Gumbo and then the Limb by Limb. And I just ended up listening to the whole set because it was just perfect. You just put it on, listen to it. And then of course the first set you already talked about too, but just fantastic show.
Okay. Well, let's go back. Let's go to the Riverport show because this is
Let's do it.
just I listened to the gin again today, probably the 100th time maybe total. This is number 6. This is number 6 on my list. This jam. It's the filler on the
Amazing.
on the 715 Live Fish. So hear the soundboard. That happened when that was released. That was really great for all of us. But there's just an unstoppable pace to this jam, and it's just there's so many different parts. There's one part 10 minutes in when Trey just won't stop, he's just not slowing down with the playing, and then Fishman starts going on the cymbals to keep the tempo up, which I feel is him just egging Trey on to keep going.
Yeah.
And it just there's this, the first 15 minutes are just nonstop. Mike and Paige are both in there. I mean, they're all just it's a galloping adventure that is just, I mean, Trey's on top of it, but it just, and then it kind of gets spacey, but never slows down. And it, and the end, Paige's organ work is just amazing. There's so much going on in this jam. And then there's that Buried Alive, jammed out version in the second set, which I think is also really cool. The show itself is a little unbalanced, I think, but there's that's just for that jam. I mean, it's just, it's awesome. It's amazing.
There were a couple shows like this on the tour that I think 725 is another one where looking at it on paper, you kind of think, well, there's one highlight and then the rest is a little bit filler. But I think when you listen to them, they flow really nicely. The first set of the show, it's not necessarily jams after Bathtub Gin, but get into Doglog, get into Ficus, Vultures, Glide. You're getting enough rare fish that you're in a really cool zone. The second set, If You Need a Fool coming out of Buried Alive is really cool. Solid Bag, Tube, Kung, Antelope to close things out. I think it's a really good show to shout out because it speaks to what we were talking about earlier, where it's a little bit more on the party fun side. And some nights that really works, and other nights it doesn't totally work. And we're going to see that kind of go back and forth for the next 5-6 years in the band's history. But I think this is one of those shows that beyond the opening jams to each set, there's enough in there to listen to, and there's enough in there to warrant an official release. This was on my official release list as well.
Yeah, me as well. This is, I think, a killer show. And obviously this jam deserves the whole show to be released, I think. But to me, what gets me about this jam is just the pulse under it. I just don't know if there's a jam that has as much of just a pulse that just has so much momentum to it and just feels undeniable. And what I kept hearing too is you can pull out anybody in this jam and they're doing unbelievable shit, like you were saying, RJ, but the way Mike is playing underneath is so melodic. It's crazy. And maybe I'm just thinking about him because I thought about what he wrote about Phil Lesh in Rolling Stone as the tribute was so beautiful. And the way that he talked about Phil's playing and how it was not what anyone would expect of a bass player. And I think about like, that's probably Mike's biggest hero. And so when I was listening to this jam, I was thinking like, I think Phil Lesh would be proud of Mike here. It's so melodic and just incredible. And the way that after the crescendo, they find the pulse in like a funk riff, like somehow I'm just like, where did you find that? It's just this, yeah, it's legendary for a reason. So good. And the Buried Alive is sick too. It open set too and jams. That's fun.
Do you remember the documentary Mike Gordon made about Alan Woody
I never saw
from
it.
Government Mule? It's definitely worth seeing.
Really?
It's all about bass players and how amazing bass players are. But there are these segments throughout where Mike is talking about certain bass players. He's like walking around like downtown of a city and he's like trying to describe to you how a bass player plays. And he's like, hold on, this will explain it. And he starts to go and like hit like bricks or like the rings of a ladder and they
That's
like
awesome.
highlight. And it's a really fun, very Mike thing. I would love to hear him. It'd be really fun if like Mike ever was willing to do like a YouTube show with like good graphics
Yeah.
where he gave him a fish jam. He just described how he was playing it in that. I think
Oh,
he could
that'd
talk
be
about
so
it really
sick.
nicely. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about that documentary and like specifically this jam. Cause you're right. Like this is one of those, like, I want to isolate every single member
Yeah.
of Fish because Fishman's got like the cowbell going and he's just riding
Yeah.
like crazy, and Page on the organ and on the clav. And I mean, they're just, I think you're right. Like it's also a wild, they've almost never, they've done this for a few songs, but like a week earlier they opened the show in Ventura with Bathtub Gin, and it's a very good 20-minute version.
Mhm.
And it's almost like they were like, I think we could do that better. And so a week
Yeah.
later they do it, and it's, top 6 jam of all time according to certain people.
So some people say.
Yeah, I mean, those people are smart. Sounds like to me. Can I just start? Sorry, I want to pass it along in a minute, but I just want to tell you guys
I don't want
that
you to
I was
pass
at.
along. I want you to keep talking.
I
please.
missed this show, the 729 show, but I did see the show after it 2 days later in Columbus. And you mentioned the cities earlier, Brian, but I think this is a really good show. I think it's like the flow is great, but there's some really good jams in there. I remember very clearly at one point during Isabella, I would like looked up at the screen on like the side of the amphitheater and saw Trey, like it was like a close-up of him soloing during Isabella, and I was just like, holy shit, this is just
Oh my God, that's
insane.
amazing.
It was like a really great time. It was a good reminder that like they were still so good, because you only got Fish in snippets when you go to shows or you listen to them
Right.
on tape. You
Yeah,
didn't watch
yeah.
webcasts. So like if you don't see them for 6 months, you're like, I don't know what they sound like really, except for the tapes. And then you see Trey just raging, on the big screen, and you're like, wow, this is still so awesome.
I
Last
forget.
is
That show's really
Bella.
good.
Last is Bell until the baker's dozen.
Yes. Oh God, that moment was crazy. But RJ, I love that point because I think that like we forget that now about how
Yeah.
long you would go in between seeing this band.
Mm.
And I was thinking about that when I was looking back at, I had my 30th Fish anniversary this last week, and I was thinking about that because you would wait so long to see these bands. Like you would wait so long to see the Grateful Dead. You would wait so long to see Fish, like months and months and months. And it was like the anticipation would just build so tremendously. And I think that's such a great point that like is hard to remember now because we see them. So we have access to so much, but you couldn't watch YouTube videos of them. You couldn't like stream them. You really had to go see them live, and you couldn't afford to do it all the time. And they would come to, near you, and you would go, and it would just be such a huge production. Like I remember everybody in my yearbook, my senior year was just all the quotes were like, I can't wait for you to finally see the Dead this summer. Like, I can't wait. I know you're so excited about the Dead show. Like it was just so much anticipation. So I love that story and can totally imagine that.
Love it.
All right, what else you guys got?
Too overexposed now.
Yeah, maybe.
Go ahead.
I have a show that I think is kind of underrated and shadowed by the night after it, and that's the 8/8 from MPP. I think this show's awesome. It has great flow, excellent playing, and really fun rarities and debuts. talk about feel good vibes. You have like a chill Sneakin' Sally jam. You've got Gaiuti, Ficus. You've got the Sweet Jane debut, a killer 2001, Tila, a Piper that goes into sexual healing, just like hilarious, and an awesome Hood. And I was also reading about this show that this is one of the last shows that was like not broadcast on radio, or that there was a way to get like a good version of it. So there was like leaked soundboards of it. So it kind of made the rounds. But this Hood is on Live Bait Volume 11. But talk about Trey's tone. Like, oh my God, it's such a sweet version of the song. And of course, you have the Sabotage encore too. So this is a great show, and I think is a perfect encapsulation of 1998 summer Phish.
That was on my list, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I have another show, so I wouldn't have to give you guys two shows. I second
Perfect.
everything you said. That was an early tape I had when I was getting into them, and Cavern opening up a set and then going into 2001, the Piper midway through. It's structured kind of weird in a good way. I'm very very here for it.
But
that is
Tila,
on my
in the Tila transition, another perfect,
Yeah.
just perfect landing spot. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
No. It's a really good call. It's an amazing spot. That's on my list for Live Phish releases.
Me too.
Really think that we could just because I think you're right, because of Virginia Beach, it's a little overlooked, and so if people haven't heard it, they absolutely should. I'm going to shout out a show that I think is very overlooked, and that is 72598. This has a 3.8 rating on Phish.net. This show kind of sneaks up on you. The second set does admittedly not have a ton of huge jams, but you get a really good flow in the second set. The first set, I love how it opens with Roses, Big Disease, Rogue, Apologies Meg, Beauty of My Dreams. Yamar goes into a fantastic minor key jam segment. Like, we're talking about the kind of blurred lines between 97 and 98. This has that feeling that it could have happened in fall 98. It's a little bit groovy, a little bit sultry in that sort of manner. We'll even let them have the Gaiuti Julius to close set one. Set two, like I said, not a ton of huge jams, but just really good flow. Piper, Wilson, Frankenstein, Tweezer, Into Circus, Limb by Limb, Fee, Antelope. Again, not going to blow your head away, but like good quality Phish that I think if you want to find pockets of this tour that you haven't heard as much before, you should check this out. And then the encore, I love how it's structured. You get Hood to start the encore, all the feels, all the vibes, but then they close it out with Tweezer Reprise. Just a really good little breakdown there. So always been one of those shows that I'll reach for if I want something that, like, Dallas or Austin, Texas is not Phish country. I know, I've seen them. It's not Phish country. But sometimes they sneak up on you and they play cool shows in out of market areas that they would not have played, say, in Philadelphia or Boston or New York or Alpine Valley type of stuff.
That Wilson is killer.
It's really cool.
I like the too.
Megan, I want to hear your next pick, but I feel that I need to, as the only person here who was at the Virginia Beach show, maybe defend the Virginia Beach show.
Defend it.
As I rarely go back to this full show because it's all about like that one moment that was amazing, one of the best Phish experiences of my life. But now I wanted to listen to the whole thing because, as you all might know, or at least you would expect, Brian has ranked all the shows he's been to, and I'm thinking about doing that myself, and I can't do that unless I go back to shows in full. So I wanted to listen to this in full, and it's it's pretty good. I mean, I think there are some. It's just the tour, like it's all so, like, the whole tour is just so fun. But I think there's like a really good, upbeat, positive, really great page work on the Bathtub Gin. The AC/DC bag is the one thing that I would probably overlook because I just listen to the encore. But the AC/DC bag second set opener is a really like, again, high tempo, just groove. The Antelope is pretty good. But I don't remember that much about the show, and I think that's probably why. But I did want to go back to it, and I do think they should release it just because they should. But that moment, of course, was impossible to describe, but everyone, you can tell, you can just hear people right when they start in the encore. It was
Mm.
absolute, like once in a lifetime in terms of a Fish moment. I was in the middle of the pavilion, and everyone was just shocked, and everyone was crying and losing their minds and yelling. And it was like, what an amazing moment to get to see a band do that. It was really unforgettable.
I mean, for them to play Terrapin of all songs too, it's such a mythical song. And like, I remember hearing it at one point, like on Sirius Fish Radio, like years and years ago, and just crying, like just in the car, because it was just, you never thought you'd hear Trey sing Terrapin Station. Like it's pretty special. It's awesome. And that Yem is super weird. It just has like no jam on it. I mean, I would love to hear that officially released just for the Terrapin. Like I think it deserves a release for that. And they've clearly been not doing it because of some sort of weird thing they had about the dead, but they could do it now. So like they should.
Mhm. I've always really enjoyed this show. I remember hearing it early on because there's just a lot of big songs that
Mhm.
even outside of the Terrapin Station, it's a good intro to Fish show, and it sounds really good at Summer 98. Like you mentioned, RJ, great jams in the Gin. Bowie's pretty good. ACC Bag, and then some weird stuff towards the end. I feel like, and I'm just going to go off the reservation here. If I'm wrong, correct me. We don't have the fact check available because you'd have to go back to an Undermine episode. But I feel like Brad Sands talked on Undermine once about how they all knew what the band was going to play in the encore, and Trey just kept playing songs in the second set, and they were kind of like, what the fuck, guys? Like, you're not going to have time to play a 10-minute
Oh,
encore if you guys keep playing You Enjoy Myself, Frankenstein, Chalk Dust. Oh, and Hell My Baby. Sure, you have to do that. I feel like my memory is like a little fuzzy about it, but I feel like Brad talked about that. You're nodding, so I think you.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, he did. And I think they, like a classic Fish fashion, like
yeah. Everybody backstage is sweating it out.
like what's gonna happen. It doesn't matter. They didn't really play the whole song like as it, it just like whatever. They did enough of it to make it awesome.
Yeah.
Megan,
I mean,
sorry,
they played it spot on, and like just like Megan noted, like the way you hear the notes at the start of it, it's not like there's still a little fear. Like the second people hear it, people are going to freak out, and so it's a
Ugh.
little quiet at the start in such a way that like I get chills whenever I hear.
Yeah.
Megan, I jumped in front of you in the queue. Sorry, but tell
That's
me
okay.
what you got.
Another show. Okay, well, it's interesting because I think some of the best shows they have released them already, except for I'd say like the Deer Creek MVP and then the Riverport. But this show I think just deserves a shout out because it's so good, and it's the 812 Vernon Down show. I mean, the show is just like unbelievable. Like so many classic rock covers. I think this is such a nod back to their influences in a way that I think they only would have done on this tour, and it's so special. And I love all the banter, like making fun of Fish the whole time because they're close to his hometown, and it's really nostalgic, I think, because they're playing favorites songs of theirs. And this show, like I talked about earlier, I think has a really incredible ability of them to like pair their influences with their originals. Like we talked about the Ramble On and the Slave. It's also a really fun and dorky show, and there's just so much fishiness to it, which you hear less and less of every year as you get away from the early to mid 90s. But I also just want to shout out this Mike's Simple. The Mike's is just so gooey and funky, and then the Simple is really, really beautiful. And then speaking to what you were talking about earlier, RJ, it does drop into like a bluesy jam, and
Yeah.
it's just this is worth listening to on headphones because there's so much going on like underneath the jam that you can't really hear if you're not listening really closely. It sounds kind of just like a blues jam, but then if you listen, there's a lot of textures to it underneath it, which is cool because it's definitely like a reaching towards what's going to happen in 99.
Yeah, and I would say that this is the one jam that of the whole tour that it gets a little like scary toward the end.
Mhm.
Like it's like
Yeah.
it gets there's not that many moments of that here in this tour, but yeah, it's really cool. It's
Right.
very and the Simple like has so much going on there, but that's a great
It's
call.
the highest rated show from this tour on .net.
Is it really?
Yeah, which
Wow.
it's that and then the Gorge from 17 and then the 2 Lemon Wheel shows, which I think one of those is a little overrated. And then
Yeah.
the Star Lake
You're
Alpine
missing-
Valley.
Virginia Beach, that's number one.
Oh, I had it further down on the.
That
That's
is. Oh wait,
I have it like pretty far
hold
down.
on. It
Hmm.
is, that is 4.496. And what is 812?
I just look
Oh
at
no,
the
you're right. You're right. 4.616.
Wow.
Never mind.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I would not have expected that.
I know. I wasn't expecting either.
Did we talk about this first night of Deer Creek at all?
No, but we can.
I think we should just. I think I mentioned
Yeah,
the
let's
ghost
do
into
it.
Lifeboy. The ghost sirens at the beginning are just like they should just bring that back. Just like press whatever the
know.
buttons are. Just like
Yeah,
press those
totally.
buttons. But it's the thing I love
Press
about
those
this.
buttons for us, guys.
I mean, and I mentioned the Reba. I think, or was that a different show? No, that's not here. Maybe that's whenever that Reba was. Did they play Reba in the show? I think mine.
There's
no,
a good
my
Reba
notes
from the
are-
show. Yeah. I'm looking at it
Mhm.
right now. There's a good Reba.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's where Trey. I mean, Trey's soloing, but the like peak of Trey's power, the end of the Bowie there, as he's going into like the trilling at the end, he stops in between each one and teases lizards and then possum and then divided sky in the like middle of the break in between like the soloing, and then immediately just picks it back up and goes into it again. And I mean, it's just like that kind of shit is
Crazy.
it's crazy to be able to do that, but just to be able to do that in the middle of that song, in the middle of a show like this is just wild. So I would recommend listening to that because it is like kind of, they don't do stuff like that anymore. But and then this is the second year in a row where they end a Deer Creek show with the Hood. That's just, this is just, I don't know. Deer Creek just has great vibes, and they need, to really
Extremely.
Yeah,
really,
I need to
really
A
get
lot
back
of
small.
Deer Creek shows we should hear.
agreed.
Yeah, great stuff. That is that Bowie's like sneaking some summer '93 into summer '98.
Yeah.
Just back and forth, like
Yeah.
teasing stuff.
It's crazy.
I'm gonna throw
else
one
you got?
more out.
Okay.
And we're
Let's do it.
basically gonna have done. I mean, we haven't done the
Every
Gorge,
show.
which that second night of the Gorge. If you haven't heard it and you're an hour and 60 minutes in this podcast, I don't know what's going on. Like that is just like Fish 101, amazing stuff. 4-song, incredible Mike's groove. But I'm gonna just give some love to the Lemon Wheel, especially since Meg just said that one of the shows is overrated.
Yeah, I agree with Megan. But go
Okay,
ahead.
all right. I want to hear your guys' thoughts.
Okay.
Look, this is not as dynamic as The Great Went. I'll fully admit that.
Yeah.
But I think that it fits the vibe that we're talking about for this tour, where it's a little bit more under the radar. It's a little bit nuanced. I think that the full first set, Mike's groove, is really cool, especially during the cities when everything gets all groovy and Trey he has those sirens on and he drops everything out so that people on the Ferris wheel are going to lose their minds. I think the Reba Gumbo Sanity Tweezer segment of set 2 is really cool.
That's cool.
Really nice long Bowie with a big droney intro to it. The ambient jam, as we talked about. And then the following night, I talked about the Ghost in set 2, but the Gin into Rift, kind of weird that in a summer where Gin is featured so strongly as a big jam, we get only 13 minutes and it's cut off by Rift, but it is a really solid segue.
Yeah, it's great.
Good songwriting or good set listing in the first set. Second set is pretty magical to me. Disease, Piper, Ghost, Fluffhead, amazing run of songs there. Big set 2 jams, Circus, Waiting, Sexual Healing, Antelope. It's just, that's a very classic 98 second set. And then the third set, 2001, is really solid. And then in the encore, we get a really cool kind of bizarre Harry Hood into Baby Elephant Walk, coming back for the first time in 516 shows. I think that like this is not the greatest festival performance that they've ever done, but it does encapsulate the end of the tour, the vibe in 98 in a really nice way, and it's a cool compliment to The Great Went. So I think it could benefit from an official release. I don't think that it's like we need Cypress and went first, but like, it's there.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I think the thing that stands out to me about the Lemon Wheel is that there's so many better versions of most of these songs played in the tour.
It's a fair point.
That's such a
And
great point.
It's a very
Jesus.
fair point. I can't
and so
argue with
it's like you get to the festival and you want to hear like the best bathtub gin, you want to hear like the best Ghost, the best Down with Disease, and they have great versions of those, but they're not the best. And then also
I just
there
want to
was
pause you really
yeah,
quick.
go
Are you
ahead.
talking about Mondegreen or are you talking about Lemon Wheel right now? I just am a little confused.
I have like a
Yeah,
bit
Megan
of a
hates
thing
festivals.
about festivals now. I've only
The
been to
worst.
one. I've only been to one. Um,
Also, it is the best Down with Disease of the tour.
okay, maybe you're right because they
But-
play it like not that many times.
Like
So
one,
yes,
like
it
two other
is.
times.
I think
And
it's
the
the best
Ghost-
Ghost of the tour.
And the Ghost is awesome. The Ghost is awesome and definitely one of my top jams of the tour. So maybe the Ghost is. And 2001 is really good. Not the best 2001. But I don't
it's
think there's enough. Like also they play like 100 hours each day. Like if you look at these sets, it's just like it's just like so much music. I think it's just too much. Like I think that what they do now, spreading it out into like 3 or 4 nights is much better than playing like these insanely, like they could never anyway, they're too old, but to play these like crazy long shows, I just don't know if it like works well. But I also have a bone to pick with the live beat releases from these shows. Like they haven't released the Ghost or the 2001 or the Down with Disease, but they released the Bittersweet Motel and the Punch You in the Eye. I don't understand that. I'm just confused. Like I'm honestly confused about that. And then, I mean, the Tweezer and the Sanity, that's cool. I'm glad they released that, but a little weird. But I do think that like the ambient jam, just like the Woodlands jam, makes up for everything. And I think the way that they end the festival is fucking killer. Hood into its sick jam and then the baby elephant walk. Like that is fucking cool. Like that is so dramatic and makes you feel like just you have it a moment. So I have good things to say about the Lemon Wheel, but also, yeah, a little bit of other stuff.
I
I don't think
agree.
you made
I
any
agree.
wrong points there. I don't think
Yeah.
you made any wrong points.
I agree with you. I mean, I also think for me personally, like getting to the end of this, I was like, that was kind of the feeling I had, was like trying, like listening to the highlights and be like, yeah, okay. But I do think the Bathtub Gin, the way that they create that, they did this a lot this tour, but like using the repetitive kind of soloing to create this like wave that they're all just like surfing
Yeah.
together along. It's really awesome. But I love every Bathtub Gin from this tour and every Bathtub Gin ever. So
Exactly.
not that helpful.
Future draft.
Yeah, let's do it.
Ooh, yes. Love that.
Good.
Love
There was
that.
a great fantasy tour user who went by KC Sublime, who did like a big listening project back in like 2009 2010 to find what is the most reliable jam vehicle Phish has ever played. And he had all these like testing models of like length, when it's played, does it segue, how many versions on the jam chart. And he came up with a Bathtub Gin. Every time you hear Bathtub Gin, you're just, regardless if it's an 11-minute
Yes.
type one or if it actually goes off like some of these versions, you're in for just like the best kind of Phish ever. And every time they started at a show I'm at, I'm like, that dude's on to something. Like, I know I'm in for
Yeah.
it. I don't care what happens. I know I'm in for it.
Totally.
It's great. It's great. Okay, so we got a lot going on here, but what do we need to do? I think we already talked about our Live Phish release candidates, right?
Yeah.
Did we do
Yeah,
it?
I've got.
I can review mine. Mine are 8-3 Deer Creek, 8-8 MPP, and 729. And Pride Lemon Wheel. Brian,
I
what are yours?
I will add to that because 8-3, 8-8, 729 are mine. I add 725, 8-9, and Lemon Wheel as a box set. Maybe like 20
Ooh,
years
yeah.
down. We don't need it right now, but like
Yeah.
all of this goodness should be released. What about you, RJ? Anything we missed?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, I would like a Virginia Beach release.
Yeah. It really
know.
should be.
But that's just
We have gotten a lot from this
Fine.
tour, which is cool. There are 2 tours
Yeah.
coming up where we have noticeable gaps that are both noticeable and inexcusable. This tour, though, between the Gorge, Portland,
Yeah.
the Riverport Jam, Burgettstown, Vernon Downs. We get a good amount of this tour, Alpine Valley, but we
Yeah.
need more.
Yeah, most of the shows that you need, but a few more.
Okay. So we're into the top 3. And I think people who've been following this closely probably will not. Oh, but we're not. We're not into the top 3. Brian
We're not
is
there yet.
holding his
I
finger up.
have to give him my big takeaway. I got one big
Oh.
takeaway from this tour. Come on, can I just give my takeaway?
I thought your
RJ,
takeaway
you
was
always
the
forget
Chicago
about
Bulls
Brian's
thing.
takeaway. You always
No,
forget
that was
about
Because his
Brian's
whole because
takeaway.
everything's a takeaway for him.
That was my theme.
It's one
Uh,
big takeaway.
Here it is, and this
Please.
kind of ties back
Please.
to the start. But following 1997 was always going to be hard. Okay, we have to
Yeah.
acknowledge this. Summer '98, I would argue, is the best follow-up tour the band has ever had. They emerged sounding fresh and loose and fun while still diving deep into experimentation in a brand new way. It wouldn't be until 2012 to 13 that this kind of multi-year growth and celebration would be possible again. We are entering, after this tour, a very distinct period of unknown. Highs, lows, no fish, lows. Can they ever do it again? Is it ever going to happen? And then summer 2012, Dick's, 1230, a good part of summer 13, which is what brought HF Pod into the world, and then obviously fall 2013. That stretch to me reminds me the most, in the near future of where we were at in 97, 98 Fish. It's also just a vibe. I think summer 98 is
just
the
a vibe,
most
man.
tour where it's just like, yeah, dude, I'm just at a Fish show. It's just fun. Like how even
So
the shows
vibey.
that like we've kind of pushed aside, or we've been like, it was okay. You would have had fun being at all these. Can't say
Oh,
that about
yeah.
every tour.
No.
That's
I
a good
agree.
takeaway. I think that the show after the show or the tour after the tour. It's a good point. They
Yeah.
did have a warm up Europe tour,
They did.
which
that's
is very
very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
sounds
Which
pretty
is,
sweet.
they probably did that because it worked so well the year before, right?
Yeah,
I think. I would
Right.
think so. Yeah.
I like
Slightly
I like-
different
I like
cities.
that takeaway.
Yeah.
Denmark, Prague, Barcelona is kind of a cool European vibe. That's not on
I
a lot
know.
of people's like just 3 city itinerary, but I'm kind of into it.
Oh yeah, so sick. Prague is so cool. My big takeaway, I kind of talked about a little bit before, so I won't take up too much time, RJ. Don't worry. But when reinvention,
Why do I always get blamed? Like I'm trying to cut you guys off. I'm just you might know
honestly,
this.
someone does need to cut me and Brian off. Like we would talk all night.
This
you
job is
know that.
about managing the segues, and so that's all I'm trying
Yeah,
to do. You guys
that's
talk for as
true.
long as you want.
I think we should
ahead,
start
Megan.
doing 3-hour
Please.
podcasts. I think that's where the money's at.
Exactly. That's our problem. We're just cutting it
Problem
too
is
short.
It's too
It's
short.
it's our mistake.
Not enough. It's just not enough.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is just kind of reiterating that point that when reinvention feels less like a necessity, it comes more organically. And I think that they feel less pressure. And so to me, this evolution of sound feels organic in a way that 97 felt searching and hungry. And once they found it, they like grabbed onto it so tight. This is kind of like, yeah, it's vibey. They're like, we might change it up. We might try this. We might do this. And it just feels more organic and less stressful. And that means they don't hit as tight. And I think there are less like consistently amazing moments, but the moments that they hit, because they're still so close to that peak and those 2 peaks in 95 and 97, they're just still able to deliver on such a high level. And I think taking what they learned from the funk, this idea of like listening to each other and being less of like a one person driven jam when they're in jams, is just works so well to this new style of music that they're heading towards. And I think they were able to apply those lessons really, really well to this new kind of ambient sound. And they're going to discover that in the millennial sound, which is just around the corner for them.
The lack of pressure is a really good point, and it's kind of the only tour where it's you've earned the reward of just going out and having fun. And so,
Yeah.
like you said, like they're still so close. The challenge is going to be once you kind of take your foot off the gas, what happens then? And we've talked
Yeah.
about a lot of these tours after this: summer '99, fall '98, winter '99, 2003. Like there's some great stuff, but that foot off the
I
gas
agree.
kind of changes things.
Changes
a little
everything.
bit.
Yeah.
I think that my only takeaway, which I mentioned earlier, but I want to just emphasize it in the context of the larger tour, which there's a lot of context here. So that's what we're here for. I think these tours are really interesting when they kind of signify a change or show a change as the tour is going on, which I do think you hear the sound kind of evolve throughout the tour. And at the end of the tour, it's a different kind of sound in the improv than it is at the beginning of the tour, which I think is a pretty cool and notable thing. And I think sure with the next three that we talk about that will happen as well. But we talked about that like last week or 2 weeks ago. So it's cool to hear that as you're going through the tour, but I feel like the sound changes and becomes something else in the midst of a tour, which I think is pretty awesome to hear.
I agree.
And that's going to be something we're going to talk about a lot in the next 3 tours, because change is afoot. Where this is the latest in Phish history that we will be for the remainder of this series.
Oh, yeah.
And we're about to hear a band very hungry. RJ, would you like to, or would you like me to, or would you like Meg to reveal tour number 3?
I think one of you should do it because you're on it today. I'm just here to
Okay,
moderate.
I can do it because this is the first time I ever saw Phish was on this tour. It's fall 1994.
Wow.
Such a sick tour. Tour number 3.
Jesus.
This tour. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I've always enjoyed this tour, but I've always thought of this tour as like a stepping stone. And then I went back and listened to this tour in full. Oh my God. I cannot wait to talk about this. I have some very hot takes about this tour. There are so many more massive jams than I was prepared for. I knew like this is the tour of the emergence of the 40-minute jam. But like you dig in, oh my God, there's so much to hear. There's so much this band is playing in.
I'll just say, and I'm not going to give this all away because we'll talk about this next week, but I have never in my life felt the way that I felt when this band came on stage on November 14th, 1994, and opened with My Friend, and absolutely just fucking terrorized us in the audience. I just never knew that a band could do something like that. So I'm excited too. Yeah.
I think that's great. That's a great place to leave it. Also, we have to go because we have to go listen to 46 concerts between now and next week.
Wait, what? How many shows are in this tour?
October 7th to December 9th. It's
you guys, I also have parent-teacher conferences this week. What are you doing to me?
You have to just tell them that the kids are fine and just
the kids are all right, man.
Kids are all right.
Do you just want to do the draft instead? Would that be easier for you?
I mean, maybe. It's okay.
We can do that.
I'm gonna power through. We'll discuss, but
as usual, we're very strict about stuff. So
that's true.
We will see you back here next week for something. How's that?
Sounds good. I can't wait.
We'll be back. Can't wait. Awesome stuff afoot.
See you guys.